This media is brought to you by Polyscope.
In the realm of tomorrow, where tech meets mind, we ponder, we dream.
Awesome. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to meet you in person, because this is how we meet each other nowadays, over Zoom. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Okay, nice to see you again, Chris. My name is Gus. I'm a CEO of several companies. One of my companies is a trading company, specializes in importing goods. And my main operating company is a manufacturing company that we manufacture industrial control systems
Mhm.
for machinery. So we do the designing, manufacturing, programming, commissioning of industrial electrical control systems. Me by trade, I'm a certified engineering technologist. So I'm not a CEO out of school, of course. And I've had some IT management role in the past, so I'm familiar with IT systems. And also because we're in industrial automation, we deal with networking and IT systems. We integrate within the IT systems.
Mhm.
And I've been doing this for about 26 years. I'm aging
Wow.
myself. Yeah.
So
And
this is not your first rodeo.
no, I've been in business for 15 years, and that's growing.
Very, very cool. Very cool. So one of the reasons why we wanted to talk today was about your recent trip to what we have many different perceptions about is China, right? And we were
That's
talking
right.
about in our pre-interview, we're talking about how it's a really interesting place, because typically we don't talk about geopolitics and countries and things like that on the show, but it's one of those places that has so many different perceptions, right? You have the American perception of what China's like. You have the Republican perception of China. You have the Democrat perception of China. You have people who've been to China, people who've not been to China. There's just so many different perceptions of the place. And you've recently been there. And I'd love to get sort of your boots on the ground, sort of report of what things are like. And we can go from there.
Yeah. Well, I was there for 2 weeks, and I did 8 cities in 2 weeks. It was a really busy trip, and I did mostly center eastern
Hmm.
part of China. But yeah, and I wanted to talk about the subject because there's a lot of talk. China is in the news every single day. There's a lot of people talking about it, and a lot of people that are talking about it, not people that have been there. They're people that read an article or read a news article somewhere and read a
It's
Twitter
all over the
account
news. It's
somewhere.
all over X.
Yeah,
It's all over everywhere. And we have this perception. There's this perception of them either being a big baddie, right?
yeah.
It's like it's a whole country of big baddies, and they're ready to eat our lunch or something like that. So either they send us tons of cheap plastic crap,
Yeah.
or they're really bad, or they're going to subvert the country, or they're going to take over the world. I mean, there's just so many different perceptions.
And they're they're accurate. In some ways they're accurate, in some ways they're not.
Oh,
But
really?
we're
Which
gonna
one? The
get into
taking
all
over the
that.
world one?
Well, everyone wants to take over the world. Everyone wants power, right? But yeah, we're gonna get all into that. So my trip was mostly for business, obviously. It wasn't pleasure. I met
Hmm.
with several other CEOs, large companies. We're talking about $100 million US a year sales companies, not
Wow.
not small potatoes. I spoke to about four of them. I met with more, but I really got in depth speaking with some of the CEOs there and the owners of the companies, which was
Hmm.
very interesting because I wanted to understand. As an entrepreneur myself, I like to know what are the barriers, what other companies, what do they see, what do they know, the perceptions that we have. You don't want to go in there thinking, oh, this is exactly how I heard about it and this is how it is.
Well,
There's
you
a
want to
lot of
have an
things that
open
are true.
mind. You want to have an open mind. Absolutely.
Exactly. So there's a lot to uncover. I got to say, by the way, for anyone who may be watching this is all my 2 week experience. So it's very limited, right? I mean,
Personal
don't
opinion.
take, it's a personal opinion. Don't have that much time to really get the good sense. You're having a few nights, every few nights we're switching cities. So it's quite the effort. First of all, they are not a third world country anymore.
Hmm.
They they have such a massive infrastructure has been built. Their cities are massive. Their infrastructure is massive. Whether you're talking, the rail system, all the buildings, the roads, the EV market. I mean, we're going to get into that. I mean, that comes into other things and the technology side of things, they are absolutely mass. They are not a third world country. Now,
Mm,
keep in mind, they've made these changes over a very short amount of time.
right.
So, some of the quality of the infrastructure is not the greatest. I'm not saying that buildings are falling apart, but it's when you're building so much so fast, there's not, and not everything
So
is going to be perfect.
would you say that they're sacrificing quantity for, it's like quality for quantity in some cases because they need to build a
They
lot
need
in
it.
a short
They
period of
do.
time? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But that's common. That would be normal for us as well, right?
Oh yeah.
We're in a hurry to do something. You need
Well,
to build so
remember the
much.
building industry sort of like turned the corner in the 80s, and now, most houses that go up are crap. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, exactly.
we do the same thing here.
Exactly. So their infrastructure is absolutely phenomenal. And keep in mind, because they made a change in such a short time, you know, you see the change in their buildings and their infrastructure, but the people need time to the culture needs the time to adjust. And the culture
Right.
is adjusting. It's just not as far as ahead as we are, but they're gaining grounds very, very quickly. China is ahead in many ways
Hmm.
and almost caught up with us in other ways. And I'm talking, we could talk in many different areas.
Let's talk
Um,
about where they're ahead of us. I'm curious.
well, infrastructure. They
Mm,
have their rail system is next to none.
mm,
Their fastest rails are 350 kilometers an hour.
hmm.
I don't know what they are in Europe, but I was in Japan just before China, and their fastest trains are 274 kilometers an hour.
Mm.
So they're super fast. Their train stations are humongous. They're absolutely big. The infrastructure on the rail system is just
Is it because
spectacular.
they have to move all these people, right? I mean, there's billions. We're talking billions of people here that need to be moved. Millions and millions of people.
Absolutely.
So these cities are enormous. Must be huge.
Not only that, you have a train that it's about 250 meters long, and we did the math, roughly carrying about 1,500 people. Every train has about 1,500 people, right?
Wow.
That's quite the amount of people you're moving around, and at fast speeds. We actually took the train in a lot of our traveling. We only did, I believe, 2 flights because they were like extremes. Like we'd have to go 8 hours on a 350 kilometer an hour train. So their infrastructure and their rail system is spectacular. And the other biggest thing is EVs and technology.
Really?
Some of their
EVs?
cities, EVs,
Are there
electric
Teslas?
vehicles.
Are there Teslas
Yeah,
everywhere?
not everywhere. There are a few, but the Chinese market has themselves well over 17 brands.
Wow. It's
And
fantastic.
yeah, it's absolutely spectacular. And if you see, I mean, I wish I could show you video, and we took video, and we spent more time in the malls sitting in electric vehicles than doing any kind of shopping. Really, that was most of our trip.
So
Is we go to
would you say most of like what percentage of the vehicles are EVs, would you say? So
so it
it
depends on
seems
the
like they're
city.
ahead of us. Yeah.
Depends on the city. So and how you know that is you look at the amount of pollution in the city.
Right.
So the cities with less pollution are more heavily. I would say some of the cities like Wuhan and Shanghai, you're looking at around 30% of the vehicles. Now, keep in mind, in those cities, you have all public transportation is 100% electric. All
Mm,
taxis are 100% electric. There is
mhm.
no, they don't make exceptions to the rules. And you have all the mopeds are all electric. Those have been all electric since the 80s. So
Right.
there's a very high percentage, and they have a very clear indicator: is their license plate green? License plate is green. Not a blue license plate is non-green.
And
And
what would happen?
literally, if
So I'm
you're,
assuming there's certain areas of the city that are allowed for EVs and certain areas that are not allowed. I mean, I think London and a few other cities are doing that as well.
I do not know about that. I did not ask or find out if that's the case. I don't
Okay.
think there's a restriction whether you can have a gas vehicle in the city or not, or electric. I'm assuming electric wouldn't be a constraint,
Oh yeah,
but
electrics never have a constraint. It's the gas vehicles that are.
yeah, I mean, we
But
did get into a lot of gas vehicles, so I don't know if there was a constraint or we're just in an area where they're allowed.
well,
But
speaking about the pollution you were mentioning, that was because there's also this perception that a lot of the cities are like polluted and dirty. Did you get that?
yes and no. No, this is my
Hmm.
second trip to China. My last trip was 13 years ago.
Mm,
And 13 years ago, I only went to one city. Well, I flew into Beijing and then into Wuhan, and Wuhan and the area of Wuhan in that Hubei province is where I spent my time. This year, I went back to Wuhan. I can say that it is cleared up. It was 100% turnaround. It was completely clear. You can go out on a sunny day and you can actually see that you can't look at the sun. Now that's the southern part. So they've done a lot of strides in clearing up their environment.
Hmm.
But that's in the southern. So Shanghai is very clear as well. Shanghai, Shenzhen, which is near Hong Kong, very clean. Wuhan, very clean. Shanghai, very clean. We went to the north, like Jingzhou, which is in central north. It was, you could look straight at the sun on a sunny day, and you can look right at the sun.
Oh,
You'd be
really?
like,
So
yeah.
did they actually? So it sounds like they spent more money on Wuhan and Shanghai and those like the southern cities. I mean, are those the ones where most of our the manufactured goods come from? Because when I hear about Wuhan and places like that, it sounds like that's where all of our electronics and a lot of our goods come from in
I
China.
think what's happened, and from what I understood, is they've started moving a lot of their factories north, and that's why the pollution has moved with it. So they have a lot of R&D. So several of the companies we met, they have R&D centers. Like they'd be in Wuhan, and they have an R&D center in Shenzhen,
Right.
right? So and they usually would have several locations. So
So the
and
clean places, the clean stuff is still in Shenzhen, and the rest of it's
yes,
being moved somewhere else into the country. Oh,
yes.
that's interesting.
So yeah, so from as far as that, so everyone thinks that hey, China, they don't care about but everyone cares about the environment. It's just
Mm,
sometimes people don't have the luxury of having the environment as their number one concern. Trust me, they all want clean environment,
right.
right?
So does
So
it feel what about the feel of the society? Does the culture feel like ultra capitalist? Or what does the culture feel like? I'm really curious about that.
they are driven. They're definitely
Mm.
driven. Are they driven by money? Everyone's driven by money to a certain extent. Obviously, the Western world is not as driven by money. We want the money. We
Sure we
want to have
are.
a
We
good
just say
time.
we're not.
Some people are. They're driven by money. They work very hard. They have the 12-hour days,
Hmm.
7 to 8, maybe 13-hour days, so six
Yeah,
days
the
a week.
996 is the 996 real? Like the nine
Uh,
hours for 9 days and then 9
no, it's
hours
more
for,
than that.
sorry,
I think
nine
it's
to
more than nine
nine, nine
hours.
to nine. Sorry, it's nine to
Yeah,
nine, 6 days a week. So they get one
yeah,
day off, and it's like it's 12-hour days. So 12-hour
yeah.
days
That's
is that's not a fiction. That's real.
that's absolutely real. That's
Hmm.
100% happening. Now, keep in mind, in China, when they have vacations, they break for 2 weeks at a time, right?
Right.
So they have the Chinese New Year that's 2 weeks at a time. They have, and I don't
Or
know
like
if it's
the
because I'm
Indians, when
dealing with,
they go for a week when
yeah,
there's Diwali and stuff like that, right? So these hardworking
exactly.
cultures, they do take longer vacations. They just don't take the same kind of vacations that we do.
Yeah, I believe China has like, I know they have the two major ones that are 10 days, 2 weeks, basically
Hmm.
2 full weeks. That gives you, 2 4 weeks. That's a month right there. And I think they have some other ones. So if you think about it, they get a month of holiday, which is more than what we would get, at 4 weeks. In Canada, it's about 4 to 5 weeks,
Right.
depending on how many years you're working.
So
The US.
do you think the 996 or the 12-hour days have made a huge difference? Because, they talk about working harder, not smarter, but I mean, I'm assuming it has made a difference as well.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea whether that works or not. They also break for about an hour and a half for lunch, so it's not a
Hmm.
full, it's not like us that we break for a half-hour lunch. They get an
Or
hour
we
and a
sit at our
half.
desk and have a sad desk lunch, right?
Yeah. They actually sleep, so the lights go off because I mean, I'm there for meetings and we don't we don't sleep at lunchtime, right? We take late lunches, and so the lights are off, everyone's sort of sleeping at they get chairs that they can just lie them flat and they can take a nap.
Well,
So
at their
whether
desks?
they're whether
At
they're effective or not, who knows?
what time of day is that? When do they go? So do they have naps in the middle of the day or at the end of the day
Yeah,
or
around
oh,
lunchtime, which I think is like 12 or 12:30 to
that's a
one
damn
thirty.
good idea. I
Yeah.
mean, we
Yeah.
have little sleeping pods at the like some of the big tech companies here. They've got sleeping pods for people at lunchtime. Why not, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
like we have to understand that sleep is really important. It's not just, you know, it feeds your soul, right? And not just that.
Well, Chris, I mean, in my experience, in my field, like we're highly technical. We do a lot of design, we do a lot of technical, a lot of brain work, a lot of hands-on work. We got technicians, technologists.
Yeah.
We find that if you cannot work doing this kind of stuff, you cannot work past 10 to 11 hours a day and be very, very effective, right? And
Right.
that's
Right.
that's
Yeah,
our
because
experience here.
this is a precision thing that you're doing. I mean, you can't just throw somebody who's really tired at it and expect them to do a good job.
Well, they're going to make a lot of mistakes, right? And that's what you want to avoid. Now, keeping that in mind, I've been to India as well. I spent a month in India actually, around a few years before I went to China the last time. And they work even longer days, but they do a lot less work. So the Chinese are
Mm.
definitely way more efficient. They are way more hardworking. They don't speak back as much. They have a very good work ethic. And the one thing that the Chinese have, Chris, that what we're getting away from, especially in the Western countries, is they don't have a high turnover in employees. That
Mm.
that that mentality has not carried forward in that culture yet. That's the
Why would
big
you? Why
problem.
is that? I'm curious as to why isn't there that much of a turnover?
It's the culture. The culture of
Mm.
the people is they believe in the company they work for. They want to see the company progress. They want to see the company grow. Now, I think it's the younger generation is probably going to change,
Right.
like everything else. But that is actually one of the biggest threats we have in the West right now is the high turnover, especially in the highly technical fields, right?
Right.
I don't know about the industries you may be connected to or familiar with, but in our industry, it's very, very, very technical now. It's not like, we have an electrical
Are you
engineer as a
kidding?
team.
Everything is like that. I mean, I remember the days when we used to be 5, 7 years at a company, and now you're an old hand if you've been there for two, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
it's nuts, the turnover. And what ends up happening is that people get unhappy with their jobs and they just keep looking, and the turnover is ridiculous. And sometimes it's even super short, like people don't show up, or I mean, it's almost like they've lost respect for the whole working culture.
I mean, look at customer service today, especially post COVID. I
Mm.
don't know how it is in the US, but up in Canada, I'm in Canada, by the way. In
Yes,
Canada,
we could tell
I've
from your kilometers.
in Canada, the service, just in general, whether it's restaurants, banks, no matter what you're dealing with, the customer service is down the
Mm.
drain.
Hmm.
And the major reason for that is not because they don't care anymore. Everyone cares. The major reason is because a lot of people are switching jobs. They're
Yep.
moving around quicker, faster, so they don't give a damn anymore. They don't care. Their quality of work is low.
Yeah, the work
And
ethic has just completely disappeared. I mean, and I mean, I don't know where that what happened there. Is it a parenting thing or is it a work thing? I mean, I can't imagine why it happened, but for it sounds as if that isn't an issue in China.
it's not an issue. No, they
Mm.
don't have that issue, but it's definitely an issue that we have here. And I think that's going to be negative. That's going to be a future negative for us. That's
Right.
we're going to lose our competitor edge because like you mentioned, what is this? What's the goal there? The Chinese are extremely competitive. So if I can transition into this other topic, is one
Hmm.
thing I got from most of the owners is everyone thinks that Chinese companies are funded by the government and they have no worrying. They don't have to worry about anything, and everything's going to be
Or at
great.
least
Well,
the
that is
government has a finger in the pie somewhere. Right.
we'll get into that. We'll get into numbers and specifics because I was very curious about that. Being a business owner myself, I care about
Right.
taxes. I care about scientific research development, how much they get for
Hmm.
development through the
Hmm.
governments. But one of the most important things that I understood speaking to all the different owners is China is very competitive,
Mm.
extremely competitive. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a walk in the park for these companies. They go through hell to get on
Among
top.
themselves, like within China.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is cutthroat. It is, yes, they all get some help from the government, and we'll get into that, but it's only the strong survive. So it is extremely cutthroat. That's number one. Number two, they're willing to take a loss to
Mm.
progress. They're
Mm.
willing to take a loss to gain market share. We had one owner who said, "I don't care if we lose money. We want to be good at what we do." Right, and
Oh,
that's key. They
nobody
want to
here
be
cares
good.
about that. They just want to know what happens. They want to make sure the next quarter is profitable. They don't care about they could really care about losses here. It's a huge thing.
That's right. That's right. And over there, and this is a business owners I'm talking to, right? And I'm thinking of a business owner, like I'm like, no, I don't want to take a loss, right? Who wants to take a loss in business?
As a Canadian business owner, as a Western, you're like losses. No, 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 that's bad. But it sounds like
Yeah,
they're willing to take it. They're willing.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Now they're
keep
willing to
going.
take it because they're trying to get ahead of their competitors. They're trying to get ahead in the technology. They want to be good at what they're doing, right? We all think of Chinese and we're saying cheap stuff. Well, yeah, yes, there is a lot of cheap stuff in China, but they're trying to get ahead. They're trying to get ahead in their markets, and it's super competitive. The same with the EV market is super competitive. Only the strong survive. So one of the owners, I asked him, well, you guys have a research facility in Shenzhen. I said, well, we do research here in Canada as well. We get certain tax credits. In Canada, we actually get 35 cents for every dollar we spent on scientific research
Nice.
development. Now that's though you have to put it in, you have to take them, but you don't get the money back in money, you get it back in tax credits, right?
Right.
And I asked one owner, I said, "What do you guys get back from your government in your in tax credits for your research?" He says, "We get 175% of what we put in, of every dollar we put in."
175%. Wow.
Yeah.
Is that a tax benefit or just money back
I
on what
did
you put
not
in?
get that information. Trying to go through the
Mm.
translator is a little bit difficult. Communication was tough, actually, very,
So
very tough. But yeah,
the state is really supporting the businesses then, so that
but
they
think
do R&D.
but think about it. It's about developing, right?
Mm.
So don't have to worry about whether you're going to fail or not. If you put an effort in developing something that's worthwhile, then we're going to put the money into it. If it fails, it fails, right? I don't know the consequences of it failing, so I didn't
Well,
talk to.
that makes me think of a lot of things to do with innovation. It's like because a lot of times innovation is hobbled by capitalist tendencies, right? The people are like, "Oh, here we want to do something really new and different, but unless it makes us money right away, screw that." Right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
here it sounds like they have more leeway to be able to experiment and do more innovative things because they know that they have that to fall back on, or it's okay. It's like a cultural, if we fall and fail, it's okay because at least we've progressed,
exactly. I mean,
right?
the risk that we have here and when doing development is I know that I have to put out 100% of the cost until later, like they probably do as well. I didn't get those little details from them. But then I'm thinking, there's no guarantee I'm going to get my 35 cents on a dollar back, right?
Right.
And scientific research will cost you a lot more than what you think. You think it's going to cost you so much, and it costs you 2 to 3 times more,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. That's
So,
where you never know you have no idea. Where
and another thing you got to keep in mind for the West, and maybe not, and we don't want to get into politics, but maybe not with your recently elected government. Looks like they're looking to change, but China has China has less barriers to making regulations that helps progress industries and markets. For example,
mm,
the EV market we talked about in the beginning. The EV
internally
market is
within China, but not American
absolutely,
companies. Okay,
absolutely.
that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
what I'm saying is in the West, we're overregulated in many areas, in
Tell me about it.
many fields. So in China, they could, if the government, so you have to look at it as is the government, and having a government that is in control of everything and controls your entire life has its pluses and some minuses. Of course, we know the
Mm,
minuses. The pluses is that if they see, for example, the EV market is a perfect example. They saw that we need to go to the EV market. No, they don't want pollution. Pollution's bad. Everything's bad. They want to change it. And one way they're going to do that is by eliminating gas vehicles. Obviously, the plants as well, but gas vehicles first. So they push regulations for having electric vehicles, for the largest cities to be all electric, and they have chargers everywhere. They're making it easier. They make it cheaper. You can buy an electric vehicle in China for about $11,000
wow.
Canadian,
Wow.
which is like $9,000 US, maybe even
Jeez.
less. I think it's up today.
I can't
So,
remember when cars used to be that cheap. It's been a
and
long time.
they're not that bad, Chris. They're
Mm,
not that bad of a vehicle. It's not. They have full featured, like three screens. They could do everything our cars can do, and then some. They have great range. 400, 500 kilometer range.
but as long as
So
it sounds like there's like a plan. Is it like the whole, like, here's a 5-year plan. Here's the plan that this is where we're going. And companies that align to that plan do quite well, but there's hardly anybody who doesn't align to the plan. Pretty much everyone aligns to the plan, right?
well, they want to if they want to succeed. Number one,
Right,
right? But
right.
but one of the other owners I've spoke to, he was an older gentleman, a PhD, very well educated. I asked him, I said, well, how, because you ask different owners different questions, right? So I asked him, how much influence do companies and private corporations have on your government? I thought that would be
Hmm.
an interesting question to ask. And his response is, we have a very strong influence on our government,
Mm.
which is, I don't know if that's good or bad to know. I didn't really think about that one. But I think all companies usually do have influences on their governments, whether it's in the West. But it's knowing that they do have an influence, the private business have an influence on the government in China is also a positive thing. That means the government is willing to listen to them and do what companies think is best, or what they think they need to do to advance.
So when it
in
comes to like a capitalist outlook, it sounds like when you're talking about business and you're like making money, etc., everything's good. Like there's nothing unlike that. When do you go off the rails? It's like when you start talking about the government, or when you start talking about things that are is not beneficial to the. It sounds because there's still that sort of social side of things where, does everyone still have does everyone have a social credit score? I mean, where can you not step? Stuff like that. There is those things you have to concern yourself with, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking great about China. I think we need to get into some other realistic things.
Right.
I don't know if they have a credit score because I never really talked to. I mean, you can only talk so much with the translator. The translator is going to only translate things that they want to translate and
Of
the
course,
way
and
they
the
want to
things they want to tell you,
perceive
they
it.
won't tell you.
Yeah, so they are very, very heavily watched. They're
Mm,
very heavily watched. I would say every 500 meters on the highways and the roads, there's cameras. So they're constantly
mm.
taking pictures of your vehicles. They know who you are, where you are, where you're
There's a
going.
lot of surveillance going on. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. There's cameras everywhere. You go to the train station to go from city to city. You don't have a ticket, by the way. You buy your ticket online and you don't have a ticket. You use your ID as your ticket. So for me, it was
Mm,
my passport. If you're a local person, use your local ID. And to get into the train stations like an airport, you go through security and you have to scan your ID, and it either lets you in or it doesn't let you in. So
so there are
so they
some
can
people
control.
who are not let in, it
They
sounds
could
like.
it could happen, right?
Yeah.
Now, so that's the first level of security. Then you go through a second level of security to get down to the platforms where the trains come, right? And you have to scan
Hmm.
your ID again. So you got to scan it twice. And here's the crazy part. Now, when you get to your destination, there is another gate that you got to go through. You got to scan your ID. So you can be rejected in one trip 3 times, twice getting in and once leaving
Jeez.
the train station. So yeah, they're heavily watched, 100%. They all work through their one app, the WeChat app. You must have
Hmm.
heard of the WeChat
Oh
app.
yeah,
It's
I'm very familiar with WeChat.
yeah, it's you can't get around without cash if you don't have the WeChat app. It's very,
Hmm.
and some places won't even take cash, depending on the place. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting from that perspective. Now, I didn't see anyone get arrested. I didn't get arrested. I was with a partner in
You didn't
one
step
of
out
my
of line. You
companies.
stayed in the box, right?
Well, I could tell you stories, but we can leave that for another time. But my one of my partners that was with me for the second week, he was going around like this and just hiding his camera. And what are you doing? He said, just I was I was told by the Canadian government, you got to watch, don't take pictures. And I said, relax. And I'm taking my camera out and took a picture. I said, it's fine. No one cares, right? Like, it's not as bad as everyone make it seem,
Right.
right? So, and even
So
when I was at the airport and they wouldn't let me through with my battery pack because it was too big. I had a 40 amp hour battery.
mm,
I literally sat there. I had time to kill before my flight returning back to Canada. So I had time to kill. I was like, I want to see how far I can push if they would let me get my battery on. And I literally spent 45 minutes. I spoke to 3 supervisors and they tried very hard to allow me to take it on. But they just have that law and they couldn't do it. So I just let it go at the end. I'm like, okay, well,
yeah,
we got to board the plane now. The fun is
yeah,
over. But
yeah.
they didn't put me in handcuffs. They didn't put me in jail. It's not as bad as
Well, yeah, and
everyone
you didn't
seems
say
it.
anything negative about the state, right? Like, you were
Of course
you
not.
stayed in
Of
the
course
box.
not.
So since it is Think Future and we have to talk about the future at some point, it's like Think Like a Futurist time. It's like the year 2034, so it's 10 years from now. Where do you think we will be? Where do you think China will be in 10 years? Are they going to be the predominant power in the world, or is there something going to trip them up, or are we returning, or what are your thoughts?
That's a difficult question to answer because you're asking for predictions. China is not going to go back. Don't think they can go back. They have some advantages. They have some disadvantages. The advantages they have is they could change the regulations on a dime
Mm,
and make something happen. We have too much regulations now. Given the American government coming in now with Elon and Ramaswamy, you don't know what they're going to do. They're going to try and make government efficient here. That's going to help. They definitely have an edge in regards to turning on a dime and being able to take advantage. Their technology is very far ahead. Did you know that already today, China is the fifth largest user per 10,000 employees of robots.
mm,
US is 10th. They're
mm.
actually using their technology now. Several hotels, they have robots that deliver stuff to people's rooms.
Oh, I totally believe that. Yeah, I can see that.
This is China, right? These are things you'd normally hear about Japan. I mean, I think China is way far ahead in technology than Japan is, because they're actually using it. Even though they have 1.5 billion people, they're starting to use their tech and try to get better and better. I think it's going to be extremely competitive. I think if the US doesn't drag them into a war, or if the West doesn't
Let's
drag
hope
them
not.
into a war,
But I
you
mean,
know,
I don't think that's possible, because we're so intricately tied together economically that a war would be bad for everybody, right? I mean, if you think about where China wants to go, where the US wants to go, where all these countries want to go, a war would be like the worst possible thing that could happen, right? Because they're so economically entwined.
But they are there, and they're not right now. As you know, China has been doing more business with Russia.
Hmm.
And when I was speaking with some of the owners there, I said, oh, you're in Russia? Is that a big market? They said, absolutely. I said, why is it so big? I said, well, the Americans are starting not to put tariffs, and they're starting to block. They're starting to penalize them for even doing business. So Russia is almost their emerging market. That you have Russia, and then you have Africa as well, right?
Right.
So they have other markets to go against. Yes, we're still intertwined. Still, everything is made in China, but how they
No,
get there, they're usually
all
Western
our phones
countries.
are made in China. All our PCs are made in
Absolutely.
China. All our technology is made in China,
And I
right?
got to say this, Chris. I got to say this. And this is very important for everyone to know, from the business owners on the ground in China. Every single business owner has said to me, we appreciate what the West has done. We wouldn't be where we are today without the West. Every single business owner had the same. And not only do they respect the West, they look up to the West. One of the business owners was telling me, we watched that rocket that Elon brought back to the ground. He said, we were so proud. We were so happy. So they're all for humanity. These are the business owners. These are the people that are supposed to have influence with their own local governments. This is how they feel. And every single one of the companies I went to, they are actually 30% of their business and their company had been propelled to that $100 million mark because of iPhones.
Hmm.
One guy said, the owner said to me, he goes, thank God for iPhone. Thank God for Tim Cook. Or not, sorry, not Tim Cook, Steve Jobs. He said
Hmm.
it was the best thing ever happened to China for their technology. Without Apple, China wouldn't be where they are today technologically. I mean, it's
Yeah.
one person's perspective, but it's an interesting perspective to have.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
wanted
and
to make sure I highlight that.
everything's a building block on everything else, right? And
Absolutely.
that's what's so cool about it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at bringing in products for my market. I mean, everything's made in China, anyways. But they're there. They're there. They're going to surpass us. It's going to be a fight for. I think they are pretty much a superpower. It's hard to deny them that. The buildings are their infrastructure. I mean, the U.S. now, most of the U.S. places I go to, they're okay, but nothing like China. Some of the newer spots in China, they're just spectacular. There's just amount of buildings, the malls, I could probably show you. Oh.
Sorry, my internet connection dropped. Sorry about that.
I don't know where I lost you or not.
Something about malls.
Yeah, I mean the malls, everything is just the infrastructure there is phenomenal. They're definitely not a third world country. Yeah, I mean some of the people they're different. I mean the Chinese people are different. I mean I was in Japan for 2 weeks and 2 weeks in China. I definitely prefer the mentality of the people in Japan or the mentality of the people in China. But I mean those are small things. Those are small things. They're they're good people overall. They care about their environment. And the most important thing is the people that are in charge of these companies really see the value of what the West has done, is what it's
Yeah.
doing.
Well, it's not we don't want to have uh, well, a competitive relationship is okay, but we don't want to have a combative relationship. We want I think we all want the same thing. See, this is the thing that I think drives me crazy, is that there's so many people out there who are trying to divide us, right? But if you
That's
go from
right.
country to country to country to country to country to country, if you talk to the people of the country, not the leaders of the country, the people of the country, they're all they all want the same things, right?
Yeah.
So if we just like get past the leadership, get past the media, get past all of these things in the way, and just talk person to person to people elsewhere in the world, we're all like, wait, we all want the same things. None of us want war. All of us want peace. All of us want commerce. All of us want to be, proficient in things. And once you get past all of that stuff in between, we all want the same stuff.
But let me ask you, Chris, this is interesting actually. because if you ask business owners in North America, I'll say North America in general, and I've spoken to a lot of people. I said, I'm doing business with China, and they all give you this weird look. Now, you talk to some of the business owners, they don't have great things to say about China, but listen to the things I heard when I went to China about, maybe they're just sweet talking me, right? That could be part of it as well. But whose leaders are saying what to whom?
Well,
The
that's what I'm saying.
Chinese
That's
leaders,
exactly what I'm
the Chinese
saying.
leaders were saying bad things about the West. They wouldn't be saying good things to us when we met them, right?
Right. Right. Well, it's
They
the
would be
same thing.
saying,
Like it's the same thing across the board. It's like there's the leaders foment nationalism, right? Because they go, oh, our country's the best, your country's the best, our country's the best. Why can't we just say, each person, and it's kind of like, you want a leader that supports your country. That's fine. But you also want a leader that supports all of humanity together.
that's right.
Right.
That's right.
And that's exactly where we need to go. And on that note, thank you so much. It was great talking with you. And did you want to give up your contact information in case somebody wants to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'll give you where you can find me on X. I'm at Vision and Biz, A&D Biz, Vision
Yep.
and Biz. I am going to be on a University of Toronto Innovation Radio National Radio Show. That'll be going up on December 25th. I have an interview next week. That's going to go up on December 25th. That's going to be
Nice.
different, complete subject. That's going to be about HR and business. That's going to be an interesting one for all those who love or dislike HR. And that's
we could go on and on about HR, man.
That's why I'm leaving that for my other interview. And that's about it, Chris.
All right, sir. Thank you. It was great talking with you. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Pixels and philosophies merge and mold, a future untold, unseen.